It's connecting. And we're live.
Wow, my
Oh,
first live.
your first live. It's painless so far, right?
So far, you haven't asked me any.
We'll just, I guess we can just have a conversation as we wait for people to join us.
Sounds good
And
to
just,
me.
okay. So, what are we going to talk about? We want to talk about your day? How's this energy messing with you right now? Are you feeling, are
The
you feeling
energy from my
chill
day?
from the world?
Yeah.
So, how Schumann resonance affected us. And last week I had Erin. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I think it was 2 weeks ago. I had Miss Erin on. She's coming back on. I'm really excited about that too. So, did you catch that at all?
I did
How
watch
she?
that. That was the first time I'd actually watched any of your lives. I
Oh,
have watched a few of your YouTube things, but
oh, oh,
that
very
was
good.
the first time I'd watched, live, and I thought she was excellent. Of course,
Oh, I
she's
love her.
an
Yeah.
educated, scientific woman, and she was well spoken, and yeah, so I thought she was. And I don't know a lot about what she was talking about, so
Yeah, well, kind of goes over our head a little bit, doesn't it? It's like I know she said something that it was important. No, she's pretty cool. I really enjoy
yeah,
having her on.
yeah.
And
No,
I think
I want to learn
everybody's,
more about her
oh,
actually.
well, then you need to come on. You need to come back. You need to come back again. I am so excited to have you here. I see some people coming on. So Amy, hi, Amy. Hi, yeah. Danette, hello, sweet soul. Miss Mary, hello. Rochelle, hello. April, hello. Mary Beth, hey, lady, how are you? June Russell, hello. Hi, Arva. So most of these ladies are on my Patreon page. So, and the last couple of sessions that I've done like this, the lives are a little bit different where I'm not doing the whole thing myself and I'm not doing readings so much. I don't mind answering some questions and doing some readings, but I really wanted to talk today about trauma
Okay, well,
and ours. Yeah,
I know a little bit about trauma
you got a
personally.
tiny bit of knowledge in that
Yes,
area.
sir. Yes, sir.
So you are actually a licensed psychotherapist, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, which I'm very proud of, right?
You
Because
sure?
the social
Yes.
worker piece is, I feel, where all the heart is.
Yeah. And you, so as a social
Social
worker,
worker.
I have to talk slow so I can enunciate. As a social worker, but you're not going into people's homes.
No, no. I'm a clinical social worker. So of course I was trained broadly for a lot of things. So I could have gone that route, but instead, I went another route, which was the clinical route.
Right?
Um, and I'm not a I'm not a there are licensed social or counselors, but I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So basically the difference would be, at least for me, I don't know about all of the other ways you can be a therapist, but as a clinical social worker, I had something like 4,000 hours. Of course, I
Right?
completed a master's degree. um, I had an internship and practicums and all of that. And then, of course, I had to complete an exam, a board exam that was
Right?
intense.
Right?
And I passed it, thank goodness. And that was years ago now, and I'm thankful. And um,
Oh,
yeah,
very good. And now you do a lot of work with people who are struggling with trauma. And as we segue into that trauma and I'll let you take over here in a second. I just want to say, I have so many people that I deal with or work with that I'm blessed to work with who have had intense trauma. I always thought like my life was crazy and that I had trauma, but some of the people that I've worked with have really had a lot of really incredibly painful past. But then I've also had people who come to me who've said, I don't have trauma. I think I did. I told you just before we started here, had somebody call me from prison and he's like, wanting a reading. And I gave him some information. And I was like, well, I'm really picking up a lot of trauma from your past, from your childhood. He's like, I don't have trauma. I was like, dude, you're in prison. You've got trauma.
A little bit of trauma, maybe.
But a
Yeah.
lot of times people think trauma is getting smacked around or assaulted physically. Or I don't even know if I can say that other word online because they bleep everything. But, usually that's what people think trauma is. And I was saying to you, trauma is anything that you cannot process.
Absolutely, right? There's, in the EMDR world,
Yeah,
um,
I have a book.
there's what we call, big T traumas and small T traumas.
I've seen that.
Oh, okay. It's backwards for me, actually.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I don't think
No,
I can flip it. Yeah, so
okay. Something about disassociation. I read it backwards looking.
looking through the
I
eyes
saw
of
the big words.
trauma and disassociation, an illustrated guide for EMDR therapists and clients. Oh, we're both looking sideways.
Trauma.
Trauma.
Yeah, so there's big T trauma and little T trauma. We know those big T traumas, like, somebody sexually abused somebody, or a veteran coming back from war, um, PTSD, for so many things, a car accident, a dog bite, complex trauma, right?
Yeah.
Childhood abuse and neglect, all of that, right?
Yes.
But there are what we call those smaller T traumas. And those are things too that we couldn't process. Our memories get stuck, and maybe they're being bullied, right? Maybe there's something that was said to you that was so emotionally harmful,
Right.
or neglect and things like that get just stuck in our body, and
Yep.
we can't process that, especially when we're little kids.
Absolutely.
It's
Well, we
really
don't
hard.
have a clue that it's something that we can even move through. So when you say it gets stuck in our body, that's something that I like to talk about because it can get stuck in different parts of your body and then cause physical pain.
Absolutely. And I think in my field, there's a lot of us that are doing more somatic type therapy, or at least talking about that. I mean, I always talk about, where do you feel that in your body? How intense is that? What sensations are you feeling? And, that's where some things might overlap, right? Like meditation and guided
Yeah.
reflections. And so we have some things that really overlap because we are
Absolutely.
wanting to release that tension, release those memories, release, all of that anxiety that builds up when we are
Yeah.
dealing.
And can we do that from avoiding it?
Absolutely not. It gets bigger. It seems like it gets bigger, right? It's going to come out some way, somehow, and it will come out physically, right? There's an ACEs study years ago, and I'm not going to try to get into that too much because I'd say things wrong.
I got you. Yeah.
But if anybody wants to look up ACEs, and you would learn that, these doctors studied, all of these patients and found out that those clients that were having these chronic issues were experiencing, or had experienced trauma or some type of adverse experience when they were a child, whether that was their parents' divorce or seeing domestic violence or not feeling loved, act around, all kinds of things.
Yeah. Big trauma, little trauma. Absolutely. Or the big T, little d. Okay. I was looking for ACEs and I was going to throw a link up. Do you spell that ACES or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
ACEs study. Wants to bring up a Kaiser ACE study.
That's it. That's absolutely it.
Oh,
Kaiser Permanente was the first, medical group to actually bring forth this comprehensive study over years. And we've got all this evidence now. And I'm not an expert on that. I don't say I'm an expert on anything.
That's okay. You don't have to be. You don't have to be, but you have some skills and some knowledge, and so that is what we're looking for.
And personally, there's a test that you
can
take. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
There's a test. So we
Yeah,
can see if we're crazy.
there's some questions that you can answer, right? So it's kind
Yeah.
of like a little, and it will tell you what your ACEs score is.
Oh,
Mine is
so
very high. I score
is that
all
good or bad?
not great. It explains things, right? It explains that there's been a lot of adverse experiences in childhood because it's
Yes.
18 years old and under. And, and personally, I come from a background with a lot of trauma. Of course,
Yes.
many of
Which
us
is
will
probably what led you to the field that you're in, because you went through the ringer. You had
100%.
you had some pretty horrific experiences at a very young age, and kind of followed you along into
Yeah.
shit. I know.
You want to grow up and do something, right? At least for me, I wanted to
Yes.
grow up and I wanted to do something
Yeah.
to help other kids. Of course, I
Yes.
wasn't a kid any longer, but you always kind
Yeah.
of feel like a kid.
And you do a lot of work with kids.
Yeah, for a while, I exclusively worked with kids. And then now in private practice, I see less kids, but
Okay.
that's okay.
Okay. I do know that you see one that I had a grandmother bring her little to one of my events, and she was talking about you. It was so sweet. She was like, she loves
Publicly
you
out loud in
dearly.
front of everybody, like, she's my therapist. I can't keep her confidence when she
I
now
know, right? I know, right?
Hey,
I'm not going to out her right now, but
no, please
it was pretty sweet. No, I
Yeah.
wouldn't do that. I
No,
couldn't do what I do if I was,
yeah.
Okay. All right, sweetheart. So I did post that, but I wouldn't mind finding the test. Is the test on here too? Do you know?
Yeah, I may even be able, let's see.
And we can look it up later too. We don't have to necessarily do it right now. But I think people might be interested in looking at that, because I do think a lot of us are dealing with traumas right now, especially because of the way the energy is hitting us. We have Schumann resonance going off the charts. We have this energy coming from outside of Earth coming in and nailing us. And where Mother Earth is just really trying to grow and to expand and to change us. So all of this stuff is happening, and we're just like, it's a lot. It's a lot for people to process. So all those traumas coming up, for me, it made absolute sense to have you on here to give some insights and some help for people about, these are some things you might be able to do to help with your trauma. These are some things to pay attention to. These might be big things, like if it's this bad, you might come see me.
Yeah. And not just me, there's therapists.
Exactly.
There are a lot of therapists that are trained in EMDR. I do EMDR and lifespan integration for trauma work, and I love both of them so much.
Tell me about lifespan integration. Is that because I feel like that is part of EMDR? Is that correct or no?
It's not part of EMDR. It's actually a trauma, another gentle approach, like EMDR is a gentle approach. I want to say things right, so let me get my little note.
You had the technical.
Like I thought we were talking about EMDR. So here.
Hi, Teresa.
Let's see here.
We can talk about all the things. EMDR is huge for me because that's what I spent 2 years with a local EMDR therapist when I was going through my awakening, because I thought I was losing my shit. And so it has a special place in my heart because I know how powerful it was for me. And I learned so much about the human psyche through EMDR. I was like, our brains can do that. Our brains are fabulous. They can do so much to protect us.
I really believe, that we want to heal. Like our bodies are designed towards healing. And so that's emotional health too. We want to go through, our body wants us to go through a healing process.
Yeah.
But we often don't allow ourselves to, because either it's too much money, it's going to take time, or we're going to feel uncomfortable. We're going to feel the things.
That's a kicker for me. Yeah. I notice a lot of people want to be in their bubble, in their comfort zone. And I'm not saying they do that to themselves on purpose, but we get comfortable with what we know. Like I can tolerate that shit all day long. I know that I stayed in an abusive relationship for far too long, but it was
when I was younger.
I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I understand that. I know what that's like. I don't know what it's like to have to do this on my own. So I stayed longer than I should have.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people do. And then outside looking in, judging those people, well, it's their own problem because they stayed.
Oh, I
No,
hate
it's
when
not.
I hear that.
I know. I yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Support for those people is very important and
Okay.
giving them a space. Okay, go.
Okay, so I got a little thing up here just so that I say things right, right? Well, lifespan, first I want to say I got introduced to lifespan integration because I went to therapy when I was younger, after a bad relationship and realizing that, I'm just accepting these really awful patterns
Yeah,
and I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm just this person who wants to be loved and
yeah.
I'm holding on to all this pain and I don't know what to do with it, right? So I went to therapy, best thing I ever did. Um, and she did lifespan integration. I hadn't heard of it. And even as a therapist, I haven't known very many people that have done
Do it.
integration, but just this past December, I went to my first training in lifespan integration. So even though it was the therapy that helped me incredibly, um, I wasn't trained in it until recently. So,
Gotcha.
it's a gentle body based therapy that helps people heal from trauma by repairing the timeline of their life. So, whereas EMDR has a piece where, there's 8 phases to EMDR. And, there's a resourcing phase where we just want to build up the positive memories, and there's bilateral stimulation, which could be, follow my fingers with your
Yeah,
eyes
I did a lot of that.
or tapping, which is my
Did a lot of that.
favorite.
Yeah.
Or, there's light bars. I don't have a light bar in my office, but I have these like little pulsers.
So also, I feel like I did knee tapping. I feel like she would tap my knees, but I had a really hard time with people touching me, and
You tapped your
that
knees?
I feel like my therapist tapped my knees. I might be making that up.
Oh, maybe. I have no idea, right?
I feel like she did because I remember her saying, because I used to have a really hard time with people touching me,
Okay.
for trauma.
Mhm.
Don't fucking touch me. So I remember her having to say, "Is it okay if I touch you?"
Yeah.
And be like, "No, yes, no."
So maybe I had a dual purpose. I don't know. But
Yeah.
usually, there's tapping on your own body and you can tap
Yes.
any parts of your body, but it's a bilateral stimulation, right? For EMDR, right? And so with EMDR, you're really, you can share as much or as little with the therapist, right? So that's
Yeah.
why it's gentle and you're not necessarily having to share every detail of the worst moment of your life with somebody unless you choose to,
Because
right?
sometimes we're not ready either, and that can make a
Absolutely.
bigger wound, right? I mean, it can make it.
Therapy is so interesting because, right, we talk therapy is important. We go in, we get, you verbally process through things, and it is valuable. The relationship that you have with your therapist
Yeah.
is valuable and it's important.
And it's important that everybody finds the right one too.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to say, hey, this doesn't feel right to me,
Yeah.
right? I want
Yeah.
to go, I need to go somewhere else because this isn't comfortable. Or be honest with the person that you've, kind of hired, right?
Yeah.
And
Because
just say, hey, that doesn't, just talk to them about
yeah.
it. And they usually have, I can refer people to other people I know in the Yakima
Yes.
Valley or throughout Washington that I know. Um,
Yeah.
but, that's important. And talking about stuff is important. And cognitive processing therapy, or CBT, that's the big thing. Um, Cognitive behavioral therapy, all of that's good, but that's all top down, right? And we want
Yes.
some, bottom up therapy, which deals with calming your nervous system.
Yes. So the reason I thought I'm just gonna So Jen is asking, what does EMDR stand for?
It stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is really not a great
It's
name.
not, because it does so much more than that.
It
So
absolutely does. And initially it was just EMD, and they realized that, eye movement desensitization, there's a lot more than desensitizing anxiety, right?
yeah,
It's the reprocessing piece
yeah,
that's really important. And there are 8 phases to that.
there are 8.
That process. Most people just think about EMDR and they think about, like, the few, when you're just dealing with the tough situation, when you bring up a memory,
Yeah,
and you use the bilateral stimulation with it,
yes.
whether it's tapping or
And what that
bumping.
does is it's not a once and done, but it lessens the traumatic feeling of the emotion. Does that make sense? Like if it was a 10 when you started, it would go down to like an 8 or a 5.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And
So
then so there is some desensitization that's happening, but really what's happening even more is these stuck memories, like memories get laid down, with these neural networks that have everything, especially let's say you're little, let's say you're 3 when something happens to you,
yeah.
and you have all the smells, maybe the thing that was
Mhm.
playing on
Yeah.
TV, you have, where all senses.
Yep.
Whoops.
Yeah, we're back. I think it kind of locked
Okay.
out a little bit, but it came back on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when those memories are laid down, right, later on we get a situation where we feel like, there's some type of threat. And it might not be a physical threat like it might have been when you were 3. It could just be somebody raised their voice to you, or someone puffed up, or somebody blocked a doorway, or somebody, there's insecurity in a
Re-triggered.
relation. Yeah,
That trigger comes to the surface. That's just, yeah.
absolutely. And then it comes with this huge intensity, right? About something maybe that is insignificant. You're not being raped again, but
Yeah.
it has all of this big emotions. And
But
what
you
people,
might not even recognize that that's what it is that
oh,
is
absolutely not.
causing. So
Absolutely
you
not.
just think you're nuts.
Yeah. You think you're nuts. Your people in your life say, why are they such a jerk? Why do they
My
blow up?
kids should get over it.
Why
Yeah.
are they so dramatic?
That's my favorite.
Yeah. You're so dramatic. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a little bit about EMDR. And with lifespan, it's different. The way you process, it's really different because you're using a timeline. And there's more of a connection between a therapist and, and client, because as the therapist, I read your timeline. And so there is an attunement.
Well, I think that's fascinating because as a medium and psychic, I do timeline readings as well, but I think they're completely different types of timelines. But maybe
Yeah,
like you can
interesting.
go back into somebody's trauma, like, okay, by the age of 3, you had experienced this, this, and this, or this. Even traumas from being in the womb will show
Yeah.
up. Now,
Yeah.
I did that with the EMDR. She called it a float back. She took me back in time and space, and I was in my mama's belly, and I could hear my parents arguing.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing what happens, right?
Now, is that connected to what you were saying, or is that part of EMDR too? Because I'm like, well, maybe she did
I
something
think in
different.
both of these, I mean, I don't want to mix them up because they're really
Yeah,
two
right.
different modalities that are used. I just really love both of them, and I use both of them in my practice. And there are other trauma therapy modalities that people use in their practice or in their clinics or wherever they
Right.
work. But EMDR is evidence based. It's probably the most well known. It is, has the most studies done on it. It is, very well known and
Right.
accredited, and people know, like, this works, right?
Yes. Yes.
Personally, I've had an experience with lifespan integration, and since December, I've also been using that with some clients in my practice, and
So
it's
what does
amazing.
it do?
I mean, that's the timeline one. And it's very similar to EMDR in the sense of, you're processing in a really gentle, body-based way. You know, the timeline,
Yeah, so do you bring up ages, or do you just say, imagine you're at this age? And I mean, I don't want you to do one, but I mean, what are the steps? I'm curious.
Okay, so the steps would be you would create a timeline, right?
Right.
So there's different protocols, and there's also I'm only trained in the first I forget what they call it, but basically there's different
Different
levels.
modalities.
No, it's the same modality, but it's different levels of
Oh,
training
fair.
for lifespan.
Okay.
And I'm only trained in the first one. And as a matter of fact, I'm sure in the therapy that I went to, it wasn't anything else than what I received. So she
Oh,
probably
gotcha.
also was only trained in the first
Gotcha.
level, which is a baseline protocol. And recently I did some work with another therapist where we did relationship protocols. And that was really fascinating. So there's a timeline. And so let's say you would create these memory cues. And these memory cues might start at your earliest memory.
Okay.
And then you would have these memory cues for each time. So for instance, 3 years old, I remember riding the tricycle, and I remember Grandpa Allen, and I remember,
Right.
something else. And so just positive, right? Or whatever. That's my earliest memory. And then you might go every other year or so and have your brain's going to fill in the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, for people that are older, like I have some clients that are older, really older, and some that are really young. So older clients takes a long time.
Right.
And I would,
A lot of memories.
yeah. And so, starting a lifespan protocol or a baseline protocol, I would, definitely be knowing who my client is. Am I seeing a client that, is, level wise, like, is she disassociated a lot? That depends on how we maneuver things. But let's just say, here's a client that is straightforward, has some things in life, but, functions well.
I am going to ask you about disassociation too.
Probably. Yeah. So, and we all do disassociate a little bit. So,
yeah, you ever drive to work and you got there, you don't know how you got there?
Absolutely, right? So with this timeline, I would read this to you over and over and over again. And so maybe I'd read it 15 times in the session. And so this connection that you have with this person in front of you, trustworthy and, an attunement, matters, I believe. Matters.
You can't do that kind of work if you don't trust the person who's helping you. You can't. I mean, that takes a lot of faith and trust.
Yeah. And therapy is weird like that because you are showing up to talk to a stranger about the hardest things that you've ever
intimate.
had.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's also really great that it's somebody not in your life.
Yeah. You can say, you can be real, you can be authentic.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you don't have them, coming to defense of somebody or taking sides. Part of being a therapist is being authentic, but being there with you and being neutral in some way so that you can figure some things out or bounce things off. And,
yes.
But with the timeline, reading that over and over again, there's usually, kind of a bell type curve where you begin to feel there's an intensity of it, right? So the faster I go, the less intense it is. The slower I go, the more intense that is.
Would you go slower if you notice there's a lot more there that needs to be looked at?
So you might go through a regular or like a little bit of a faster pace several times. Yeah. Again, I'm not expertly trained in it, but I never say I'm an expert on things, but I am.
I think you're being, what is that? Humble.
Cautious. I don't want this pop up somewhere. She says she's an expert. So with that, right, if you, like, let's say it was you and you began to have something that was kind of really feeling strong. I might say, what are you noticing around somewhat similar to EMDR, right?
Yeah.
We might go through it a few times, and we start at when you were first born, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. If you're doing a birth protocol or a pre-birth protocol, yes, you do before you were born. But for this baseline, you start at, you're basically, you were born, you can sit up, you can walk, and then start with your first memories. And then I'd be reading all of these, and
Right.
I'd go back, and I'd be reading all of these. And then, I'd be checking in. How are you doing? And there's a piece too where every time I read one, you can push your feet into the ground, which is really grounding. Squeeze something that you have, like a squishy, and then also putting a kind of one of those weighted little blankets on your lap, so you
Oh,
get really
yes.
grounded and you're here and present. And that's just so helpful. Well, some things light us up, right? Emotionally. And maybe something that you didn't think, brother so and so was riding his bicycle. It's just a memory. All of a sudden, you're realizing I have so much emotion around this. You know what? So maybe I would slow down there,
Yeah.
right? And then you'd
And
feel
pop in.
yeah,
What is
and just
that?
feel that more, right? And over and over again, we would do that, right?
Yeah.
And at times we go faster, at times we go slower. But this is a super incredible way that somehow, some amazing way our brain works
Yeah.
is that
It is. It's fascinating.
memories begin to be integrated, right? So instead of these traumatic memories that always are like, imagine them just kind of sticking out, right? They're always
Yeah.
sticking up, they're always sticking out. Um, Instead, it's more like everything comes aligned and everything's integrated. And so you're no longer going to be triggered by those like you were before.
Right. So that is something, and it sounds to me like something that you really enjoy doing,
I
being able
do.
to help in that.
I enjoy them both. I
Yeah.
do. I just
Yeah.
personally, I went through Lifespan. As a therapist, I mostly do EMDR, so I see
Right.
the value in both of them.
Right. Right. Well, I'm not a therapist, but I did go through EMDR, and that was freaking cool. I mean, one thing that I learned that I thought was so fascinating is how we can kind of separate out at different ages. And then if we get triggered, so say 8-year-old me had somebody punch her in the face. And then when I'm an adult, I'm in a situation where somebody maybe towers over me the same way that it happened to me at 8.
Yeah.
And then I would get triggered, and that 8-year-old self would express herself. And that's where you've heard people say you need to grow up or start acting like an adult, or well,
Absolutely.
you fucking can't. Especially if you've been traumatized at that age and you don't know what that is.
Yeah, you're
So,
stuck. There's many parts of you that are stuck at,
yeah,
at that age. Right.
yeah,
And there are a lot of therapists that do parts work, I'm not
yes, that's
trained
what
in
I.
IFS. I'm not trained in IFS, which is most known for internal family systems, but definitely
Okay,
I think I'm, at least I do know about parts, heard about parts,
yes,
experience parts. Even in EMDR training, we talk about parts, right? And we
yes,
have
yeah.
parts.
We do, and I think it's fascinating. I think it's important for people to know, especially people who are dealing with their own traumas right now, that it's you're not being a child, you're not being this, or you're not you're trying to heal, and that it is okay to feel those emotions, and you should, and you need to.
The most difficult thing is we beat ourselves up. We beat ourselves up whenever, I mean, let's just take binge eating, right? Or
Yes.
any type of, well, me too, occasionally. It's been a struggle,
Hey,
but
I get hangry.
any type of thing that we do that was developed as a coping, right?
Yeah. Yes.
We treat it as this most awful thing, right?
Yeah.
And then we beat ourselves up instead of recognizing, like, look, that might have helped you survive at 8 years old,
Mhm.
right? And but you don't need that any longer. You have, that's your 8-year-old,
Yes.
I mean, I know it was my, I know it was my preteen girl who went into the, refrigerator and put vanilla ice cream in the glass so it looked like milk and poured a little bit of milk in there upstairs and ate it, right? So I know how old she was when she started doing that, right?
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
big feelings,
Yeah.
insecurities, right? What are the things that drive you to those to do
So
those things instead of being mean to that part of
yeah,
yourself? It's more like
punishing yourself more.
more like
Smoking. June
yeah,
says smoking.
absolutely. Absolutely. But be kind to yourself and recognize like that was something that worked for you then. It was a survival mechanism, right? But now,
Yeah, it got you through
yeah,
it.
now you can learn something new. You can choose something different. But when we're mean to ourselves, it's just this whole awful cycle and we can't move past because guess what? We're our own bully. Imagine the bullies inside of us. If we have
Right?
something like 60, and correct me if somebody knows the truth, but if we have something like 60,000 thoughts a day, and the majority of them are negative and cruel and unkind, goodness sakes. I mean, like we're stuck in
Yeah.
middle school for the rest of our life.
Right. Ain't nobody
Yeah, but
gonna
like
be
it's inside of our
here.
own head. Yeah,
Get the
it's
hell
inside of our
out.
own head. We have to care enough about ourselves to make a difference,
Yeah.
you know. And on a spiritual
Yeah. And we deserve
side
it.
of things, right? When we go through and heal through EMDR, lifespan, through whatever you choose, right? When we work on ourselves and we heal, we're more open.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And we don't get triggered as much. I mean, we can be out in public and we're not spending our whole day being triggered by
Absolutely.
other people. We can just be. That is the best thing about going through any kind of work where you're healing yourself. And it doesn't have to be
No.
EMDR and it doesn't have to be this type of therapy, but anytime you can just sit with yourself and just feel those emotions, let them come to the surface. Now, I suggest therapy for people. Sometimes I've had clients come in that and I will joke and say that's over my pay grade, but people who I feel like I don't necessarily know that I'm qualified to help with that
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And I have actually sent
Yeah.
you people who I thought, okay, so how comfortable are you talking about some of those kinds of things where maybe somebody has multiple personalities or maybe somebody is
Yeah, well, I
disassociated?
work I mean, with trauma, a lot of people disassociate, and there's different levels of disassociation, right? Like, we joked about walking into another room and forgot what went to go get it or,
Yeah.
you know
Yes.
yeah,
And
for me,
that's
it's always
this.
in the shower.
Yes.
Did I use the conditioner or not? I can't remember. Was that yesterday or that today?
Yeah.
Damn, I have to do that again, or did
Yeah. And
I?
I yeah. Or when you're making
Yeah.
a recipe, did I add salt?
And that's just the normal bit that happens in life because we have a lot going on and our mind, we, yeah,
Yes.
we can
Monkey mind.
really, go somewhere. But our body does cope in a lot of ways that are, miraculous, really. The girl that's being raped or the young boy that's being raped can disassociate and, you
Yeah.
know, and that can happen. And, on the
Yes.
extreme level, you would have, you know,
Like Sybil.
yes. Well, yeah, yeah. And,
That
absolutely, it
can
can
happen.
happen. And there's people that, a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people. There are some people out there that are dealing with,
There are cases. Yeah.
um, things that are so challenging because
Yeah.
because that has happened to them. And instead of,
Yes.
I mean, I don't personally work with a lot of people who have DID, but
Have met that.
um, I know I have.
And disassociated
Yes.
identity
Yeah.
disorder is what DID
And
is.
I mean,
Yeah.
there definitely are people that have come through with trauma that, that I treat, that I can get a sense of it's possible, right? Um,
Yeah. I'm going to put a question up real quick. This is Rochelle. Can EMDR help with personality disorders?
EMDR,
Well, I know it can help with multiple.
EMDR, EMDR will help somebody with personality disorders because most people with personality disorders have trauma. So it may not change that that person has personality disorders, right? But it may change the way that they behave or react to things, right? And over time, I
Sure.
imagine, that they will heal. I personally haven't had, like I said, a lot of people with um, DID, but I think there are a few people in town, or at least I know of one person in town that um, used to work with people with DID. It's not it's
Who
not
did DID?
super common. So I
Yeah.
or it's not.
It would probably be an intense situation that would cause somebody to split at that level. It wouldn't be just your everyday. That's really sad that I'm going to say that, but because we all have trauma and we all know that we have trauma to some level, but that is a really intense situation where, like Sybil, where you would break off, where something you can't handle would have to just right off the charts kind of trauma.
I think it is, each person is so individual. What is difficult for one person might not necessarily be for
True.
another
That's true.
person, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah,
Yeah, so
100%.
that I don't know. But what I do know is there may be more people that are dealing with that than I know of, right? Because I imagine.
Yeah. I think most people hide it because they're afraid, because our we ran into this because our care system is just fucked up, because people have these problems, but if they go to get help, then they're going to get institutionalized, or they're going to get told this, or so people can be scared, but that is because of our system. I don't know how much we want to get into that. I could go down that route.
Well, I'm an
You might not want to go down it.
I guess I should say I'm an out-of-network provider. I don't deal with insurance anymore because of the system, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really unfair for, like, let's take somebody with a severe case and then they come to a therapist and they need 2 or 3 sessions a week or 2 sessions a week, and they need a longer session, and Medicaid will say, I'll pay you for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And it's
it's
not
unfair. It's unfair to the therapist, right? That's a heavy need, right? It's it might make that therapist have to work with a lot of other clients.
Yep.
Work with so many more just to make ends meet. I don't know. When I got out of clinic work, I just decided I was too burned out to deal with insurance. And so I needed to take care of myself. And that was the first time I had allowed myself to do that. I always felt like I want to serve. I want to work with communities, the lowest income communities. That's what I always wanted to do. And I did that for a lot of years, and I burned out. And
do you feel like it was mostly the paperwork stuff? Like, now I've got to get, there's so much that's involved with insurance. I don't take insurance because I'm not a therapist, but I know that my husband had a lot of medical stuff. So dealing with insurance is just like,
I think as a therapist, we carry, let's just take energy, energy, right? So let's say I'm seeing, right? A little bit. So let's say I'm seeing, 10 people a day in an 8-hour day. And
that just made me tired.
And I'm mostly doing people with, complex trauma or
Yeah.
high anxiety, depression, suicidality. Maybe
Yeah.
somebody has DID, but we're not getting there because, it's, it's, you know, the system isn't set up for me to be able to dig in and explore that you know, as well. And it's not
Yeah.
recognized so easily. I mean, um, it takes time and it
Yeah.
takes people really trained to say,
Yeah.
hey, I think I know what this is, and this is how you treat it. Usually people like that get into situations where they are just told they have a personality disorder that is, and then it's like you're a bad person kind of thing. And, instead of
Yeah.
recognizing there's trauma underneath this that's driving this. Um,
Yeah.
and people don't feel safe and they can't heal until they feel safe. It's
Yeah.
going to take a longer process for somebody like that.
Yeah. Which is kind of sad because it's already seems like it takes a lot.
Yeah.
So I have a list of things here. Did we talk about the window of tolerance? The,
No, we
because you
can.
said, because the word, my word, overstimulated. I've been using that a lot. I've been using it with my husband. I'm overstimulated. Leave me alone.
I'm overstimulated. Look, so with the window of tolerance, it's just a tool we use for describing how a person might get into a fight or flight or freeze. And so most people know, hey, I'm in fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
But imagine that we all have kind of a window. I need to
Yeah. How much
grab
we
my
can put
hands.
up with.
Yeah. So let's say we have a window of where we feel our feelings the right size, right?
Yeah.
What the right size for me, the right size for you might be a little bit different,
Fair.
right?
Fair.
So, we feel our feelings the right size. We can think clearly, feel our feelings. This is where we experience all the qualities of self, right? We can feel
Yeah.
calm, curious, connected to ourself, connected to other
Yeah.
people. Sometimes we're so anxious, we're so depressed, or we're so traumatized that we do not feel connected to our own body, right? We have depersonalization
Yeah.
or derealization. I don't even feel like I'm in this world. I don't recognize what it feels like to be in my own body, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty intense, right? Our goal, right, would be to heal so that somebody could feel connected to themselves and connected to other people, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're here to
And
connect.
want to connect with other people.
Yeah. Also have compassion, right? You're in your window of tolerance when you're confident, you're courageous, you have compassion. When you're stepping outside your window of tolerance, right? Your sympathetic nervous system's kicking in, things are going up. We're in what's called hyper arousal, right? That's that urgency to act.
Adrenaline. Your adrenaline would be running during that, right?
Absolutely overstimulated, right? Unsafe, hypervigilant. I've got my little list here. Panicked, terrified, rageful. You ruminate. Ever ruminate on things over and over and over again? I call it the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Over and over again, right? This is where we feel overwhelmed. We have difficulty with sleep. Sometimes we have a loss of appetite, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I don't have that problem.
Oftentimes, right? Then we come down, right? And then there is also hypoarousal, right? That's when we're deadened. We feel,
numb.
Yeah, we feel numb, right? And this is the freeze, right? So we can be triggered because maybe we had a traumatic experience when we were little and we were so little, we couldn't do anything.
Right.
Because we weren't powerful enough. We didn't have a voice. We didn't have strong muscles. We couldn't run fast enough because this was a bigger person or this was a car that crashed into us or right.
Yeah.
What could we do? Freeze, right? That's what we did. Our body does it. It does it automatically to protect ourselves, right? It goes numb, right? But this is where we soothe with food, right? Our goal would be, right, with therapy to help people to know how to move back up. Like no shame, no blame. Okay, I'm noticing with curiosity that I've stepped outside my window of tolerance. Right?
And I like that. No blame, no shame. Just curious. Don't label it. I get that over and over from
Yeah.
spirit. Stop labeling the experience. It is an
Yeah.
experience. Look at it, feel it. I do want to, I know I didn't mean to interrupt, but I kind of did because I
That's
want
okay.
to ask you. So I know I have some tips on how to move through that stuff. As a professional, do you have any tips on helping people when they get overstimulated and what they can do to kind of move away from that energy?
Well, absolutely. Like if we're overstimulated and we're in fight and flight, right? You know, this is kind of how I say with my clients, right? I want us to validate our feelings, right? First, right? Instead of
Because
people
they're
saying,
real.
like, I'm crazy, I'm
Yeah.
just crazy, or I'm out of my mind, or, whatever, right? Validate, like, I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm feeling anxious. Like, I'm feeling scared, name it if you can. Calm, and
Yeah.
then calm your body, right? There are a lot of ways to calm the body, right? You can drink a
Yeah.
cold glass of water. You can splash cold water on your face, take big, deep breaths. Anything we can do with our body for our body is helpful, right? Because we have all this
Yes.
power to be able to do that, right?
Yes.
Um, Tensing and relaxing your muscles, if you can get yourself into like where you can meditate or do a guided meditation, when you're
Breath
in
work.
that level, right? Usually you need to be a little bit calmer before that can take place, right? You can distract yourself, but when you do find that you're beginning to calm down, then you can pay attention to the way you talk to yourself. And
Yeah.
this is where it needs to be really encouraging and helpful, right? We're not going all Pollyanna, right? Like we're
Yeah.
not going like, okay, I went from being really negative to I'm Pollyanna. No, let's just be neutral with ourselves. Let's just be
Yeah.
um or encouraging, right?
Okay.
Like this was anxiety. This was an anxiety attack. Let me look around. I'm actually safe. Nobody's actually hurting me. Let me get curious about this, right? And then you'll notice that you'll begin to come down into your window of tolerance, right? When you begin to feel your feelings again the right size. You can be
Yeah.
mad,
Yeah.
right? But you can also feel connected to yourself when you're mad. You
Yeah.
don't feel like you have to, break something,
Yeah.
right? Or run.
So do you think sometimes when you are outside of that window of tolerance that it's also an inner trigger and a trauma? The reason I'm bringing that up, it's one thing that I learned how to do is look at your hands, look at yourself. You know you're okay. Tell yourself and remind yourself that you're okay. And then just have like, have you ever looked at your hands and they're bigger than you remember them being? And then
Yeah,
it's a different aspect of yourself that you're
absolutely.
working from. And that can be weird if you've never experienced it before. It's like, what the fuck is happening? Why do my hands feel bigger?
Yeah,
That
because
makes them
I'm not 8 years old anymore, right?
right.
Right. In those moments, you actually feel like you
You're
might be
8.
little, right?
Yeah.
We don't
So
realize how that really is happening in the moment because we
yeah,
don't think
no,
about it. We just
yeah, because when we
react.
say it out loud, it sounds nuts. But it's like, no, that really can happen. And that really is a thing. And that's how beautiful your brain is and your mind and your body are trying to, help you cope with that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's,
if you are in a place where you can, and not everybody can do it right away, but it takes some build up over time
yeah.
to be able to say, you know, I am safe. I am, and this is one I love, that I've done with little kids. It's called stomp, stomp, blow, right? You stomp your feet, you blow out the air. You stomp your feet, you blow out the air. And you can even say, I am Tina. I'm 54 years old. I'm in my office, right? I am safe.
Oh,
I am
see, I
safe.
love that. I
Yeah.
might use that.
Stomp,
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 stomp.
blow.
Blow. Okay, we have a question. I don't know what this. I don't know if this isn't actually a question. Hi, Sam. I have a foster kid with RAD.
Okay. Who said that?
Samantha. There, can you see it on the screen? I just pulled it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
How long has she had this foster kid?
Sam, if you can answer. So while we're waiting for her to answer, can we go to this one? Is EMDR something we can practice on ourselves?
I would say no.
Because I need details.
I don't know, because I was trained that way. No, I you know what? There are many things that you can do on yourself. I think it's good to process the challenging memories with somebody. At least go and start with a therapist that can teach you some techniques that you feel confident about, and you know that those techniques
Right.
for you kind of bring you, bring you to a calmer state.
Yeah.
Um,
I will
I would
say
process.
personally, especially if you've got big traumatic memories. I know one of the things my therapist did was had me put everything in a box, and I actually didn't have a box. I had a room that was like a safe, and then I nailed it and I glued it and I put boards up and I put chairs up, and I still could have things were still coming out to try to get me. That
It's
was
your container.
intense.
Yeah, it's your container.
It's your container. And I feel like if you're in that state or phase, you do want somebody who's qualified and able to help move you through it. I came from such a place of fear that I thought everything was going to eat me.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so fucking adamant now about face that shit. Don't run from it.
It's important, right? It doesn't mean like you can do so many things on your own. You don't have to have a therapist for a lot
Right.
of things, right?
100%.
But
100%.
right, like, lots of coping skills, self-soothing techniques, right? Things that help you feel calm, secure. Use those things every day, but um, connect with connect with a therapist, especially that might be local for you. If you need to be in a same office with a person, right? There's a
Yes.
lot of
Yeah.
therapy out there in the world, but you want somebody to teach you some techniques and let her or him monitor you and see, right? Assess you and
Yeah.
see, like, okay, this doesn't seem to be working for you, or this seems to be increasing, the intensity of things for
Yeah.
you. And, just get that feel, right? Until you feel confident. I don't know. There's something powerful about therapy when there's somebody else connected with you.
Yeah, I threw her up. She did say 2 years is how long she's had the foster child. And they haven't found anything that can calm her in an episode or outburst. We've tried a lot of things to teach a kid these things.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I've worked with kiddos, and it is hard. This is a long game, right?
Yeah,
What we're talking about here is a long game, and it's not going to be fun for you, right? But consistency over time, guidelines,
I don't know what rad is. What's rad?
I know, but of course, because
I put you on the spot. It's
I'm
okay.
live.
So so Tina was like, I don't know if I want to do this, and I was like, you'll be great. You're gonna
No,
do it.
because I have menopause brain also. I want to be honest.
You are amazing.
Of course, I do know what this is, but is she going to say it for me?
Sam, say it. Say it, Sam.
Oh,
Say it,
reactive
Sam.
attachment. Yeah, reactive
Okay,
attachment.
okay,
So I
okay.
just said it.
Oh,
I didn't want to say it wrong. So, with
she's
with reactive attachment, um, yeah, any kiddos from the foster care system need so much love. And at the same time, if you're working with a kiddo with reactive attachment, they're not going to want to see your love in the same way you want to give it, right? Like, there needs to be that consistency over time. And I guess, when it comes to those big blow ups, right? Like, I can think of a kiddo that I worked with that, man, like, she would destroy a room, and it was, so heartbreaking for her foster family,
because
heartbreaking
they're
for me
trying
as
to.
a therapist, right? Um, and they would fix the room, and it would happen, and they would, and really, I know it's a thankless job. If you're doing it, you must be, you know, feel so strongly about doing it. So, get your support team around you. Make sure you know
Okay.
how to calm yourself. Make sure any other kiddos in the house understand that this is not your guys' fault. This
My
is a first.
understanding over what you're saying right now is this is like complete meltdown kind of experience.
Really unhealthy attachment is always hard, but with reactive attachment, you're really getting a kiddo that, can't show empathy, um, desperately needs the love and connection, but just can't even accept it, right? It's so difficult. And it is, like I said, it's a long game. It's a long game for kiddos and foster parents, if, or adoptive parents who get kids.
Do you think EMDR would help that?
It might. Yeah, I've done EMDR with a few kiddos when I worked at the clinic that had that. Being in the foster care system is also precarious. There's always changes, right? There's certain times that foster care families, they just cannot handle it anymore. For whatever reason, it's too much, right? And that's understandable, right?
Yeah.
It's understandable when they are like, I can't put the other kids through this. But, oftentimes they go from house to house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't show.
Oh.
There is a couple really good books out there. Not that books are everything, but
Might give her some insight though.
yeah. And
Some
so I'm sure if you have this kiddo in your
oh
okay.
gosh, that just punched me in the gut. That was bless your heart. That's pretty powerful, sweetheart. That's pretty powerful. There's a reason you're in her life.
Yeah. And I don't know how many homes she's been in or what she's been through, but I know the kids that I've worked with, the trauma is something that is just impossible to express what some kids have gone through
Yeah,
at such a
literally.
young age.
Yeah.
And then to not have have their supposedly their safe people be there for them, then right, those are not healthy people. That's how they ended up in the foster care system. And then
Yeah.
rightfully people, 12 homes, 5 years. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Is that the system doing that, or is that the foster parents doing that? Because I mean, I get it, because that would
It's a
be a lot.
combination, right? It's a combination because imagine, right? I mean, I have so much empathy for everybody in the system. They want to do one thing, but there's these laws and these rules.
Yeah.
And then maybe a parent or a family member gets some access to the kid, and then things go all wonky again and they come back into the system, right? And then there are, with a kid with this much behavior, it's really hard on a family.
Yeah,
And
she says it's her behavior in most cases, but it was a combo. Yeah. So very hard for people. So, and again, on one hand, that they probably tried what they knew to help her and probably thought with their hearts that they could help her. And I mean, that's taken a lot of energy on. Boy, my heart just goes out to you for being willing to give her a home. And imagine what she must be feeling just to not feel secure and safe.
Yeah, this is the thing. There's so much reactivity going on inside of that little person that she doesn't even know, right?
No, they couldn't. I mean, she said this would be nice to learn more about the. Oh, here, I'll just put it on the screen. About this as foster parents for these kids. Oh,
I wish there was more support out there for foster kids. I really do. I know that when I was working for the clinic and working with I worked at Yakima Nation Behavioral Health, and I worked at Comprehensive, and I worked at Farm Workers Clinic. So I've worked at 3 different clinics in the Valley, and I worked with a lot of kiddos.
Sam, you are the one, you messaged me about that, yeah?
I love that. Animal therapy is so
Oh, I'm an asshole because I didn't get back to you. Message me tonight, would you? Just message me tonight, sweetheart, Sam.
we do animal therapy for all foster kids and people that need it. I want to learn more about this as well.
Oh, well, maybe that's okay. Sam, you message me, and then maybe Tina and I can talk, and maybe that's something we can do together. I'll fill you in, Tina.
Okay.
Okay. So, also while Sam is on here, there is an event coming up August. I cleaned my desk today, and I don't know where I put my calendar. Where the hell did you go?
Did you do a training with an agency? What kind of training? What does that mean? Would you do a training with an agency?
Sam, we need some more information on that. If she, I don't know, she just left.
About this therapy work? I can't teach other people EMDR because I'm not a consultant.
You would have to be a certain level.
I would have to be a consultant. I am a certified EMDR therapist, but I'm not a consultant.
Okay. So what I wanted to say real quick to Sam, Yakima Nation is putting on an event the 19th through the 21st. This is free to the public. You can, I think, go to Yakima Nation on Facebook. I think there's a link. I think I even might have shared it on my personal page. I'm pretty sure you follow me on my personal page. I'm going to be there doing some talks, and I think that might be something. I'm not sure what all they're going to be sharing that day and who all the speakers are, but I would suspect there's going to be some people there that might even be able to give you some more information too. So not instead of, but in addition to. So Sam, you might look into that.
Is her kiddo getting services in the Valley?
Miss Sam. Well, she might have left. Okay. Oh, no, there she is. Kinda, there is. Oh.
Okay.
Well, maybe that's something we can all put our heads together. Maybe you and I can talk, and then I'll talk to her too. Okay. With that, it is after 6, so we've been on a little over an hour.
I see a hey mom up at the top. That's my son.
Oh,
hey Robert.
Hi, buddy. I was like, I don't think my daughter follows me on here. So. And then I saw the name. I was like, that's not my kid. Okay. All right, sweetie. Thank you. See, it wasn't.
No.
Did
you log off?
No, we're still on. We're still live. So I will just tell everybody goodbye, and then we'll log off, and then we'll talk.
Okay.
Okay, guys, have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for the opportunity for us to share with you, for sharing some information. I'm going to close now, and I do plan on doing a live next week. Maybe I'll do some readings next week. All right, kids, take care.
Bye-bye.